Whatalo whapitua la, e le whaletua ia Emele Palamo, ia ona whapena fo lea, ona whatalo whatuai, e le sunga, ia Thomas Kawa Nicolau. Ia, malon sa fua manuia Emele, whaftai ua whavanua mai fo le taimi, tātou te aleanga, ia ai whafonga lea tunu.
Ia, patalo whatu lawa fionga savea, ia malo lava le tautua le aso whaiso o lava mo le mamalu le tunu i lawa fionga. Ia whaatalo whatu fo i le mamalu o Samoa o whaafonga mai le neia fiafi, malo le saifua manuia.
Ia, malo whaftai fo i, o wawa iatu sulu o le tila, o whapea wa nei o le ata le whenua, i ona o whalongo. Ia wa sa ua le vaa le tele fo i o le pisi ma ngā ruenga o lo whea ngai ma lawa fionga le whaltua. Ia o mea le lei uma mea na, tu unisi vaenga. Ia a whai nisi vaenga, on o le sila fo o te lo le tele au clients ma teimi, e wha alu mō i lātou, o le mea tā ua le na. A o leso, o le autu o le tāmata upo o le malu I Fale. O le sila lea ia I lātou e whaatino ina le ngā ruenga. Ia po I lātou fo I e toi o mai e toi whaale lea tiri le ngā ruenga, o le Fale wa umana whaatau. O renovations, ia po le toi whaale lea o le Fale, constructions, po le whausia fo I o le Fale. O si tepu mua lava ma vaenga tā ua ona e tilo iai, a o le I whaia se ngā ruenga.
Ia, whaftai tele savea mo le fasili tā ua tele le vaenga lea, ona e pei lava o le whaasolonga po o le proceso tūlanga whapea e tā ua lona whaamalamalama le malu le tunu. O le me mo mua lava au te talosangaina le malu le tunu o le whaatino lea so pre-approval, po o le whaatawino so whale fōu, po o le whaale lei fo I o lo maotala iei le taimi nei. E tā ua tele le whaatala noa mo mua o le vaenga tupe, ona ai lei anu atu sau tala noanga I le vaenga le iei le sunga Thomas, le au builders, o designers a mai me whaapea. E mana umia fo I lātou po whiala iei le tātou pakeki, So e tā ua tele le sa ili tala noa a whaapea o iei sau mortgage broker, tala noa I lo mortgage broker, a whaapea le ai. Yeah, e mawhaila ona whaafsotai mai au. I'm more than happy if whaatala noa po atu langa ese, but the first step for anything, po le whawino se whale fōu, po o le whaatawino so whale, po o le whale leo lo maota, o le sila pe mawhai ona whai se tātou pre-approval.
Alona o winga la, o le pre-approval fo I lea, e taipeia o le teime whaatau e le whale, o le wala watu I lawa fionga o no tō whenua I lea. Ia a o le alafa atu pea, the process, whawhiana whaila le pre-approval lea.
Ia, mana ia tele le tūlanga lea, o le pre-approval lai, le maua mai ia tātou o te sarosanga inai le tātou, tupele maua o le tātou income. In the case of renovations, wa o le wa ieilu whale tu mau le taimi nei, ia la talo sa inga po le ale tātou mo kesi lea e tutoe le taimi nei ona o le tāua o le malamalama I le mo kesi lea tutoe le taimi nei ma le value o le tātou mota. Ona I loa I le pepetu nai po le ale tātou equity lai ava noa. Ena ia whaatino I le ngaluenga lea tiritila iai, so ia mana umia le tātou confirmation na tātou tupele maua le taimi nei. Ia o le au whai o le tātou mo kesi lea iai. And an idea po atu ai ngā renovations ia e mana o mia whai. E mo I lava lele I o le tala noa ngā I le kamuta. But at least a ballpark figure e mawhai ona o tuuina I le bank. So the bank will then have a look pe ngā whatia le tātou tupele maua mai. Le tātou income le maua mai. Ona sustain le tātou repayment pe a approve mai le tātou approval. E whai ei le ngā luenga le renovations. O le tūlanga le tāua I le sila I toa I ngā mea whapea wā o le si fo I tūlanga o le a le tātou application I le bank with le tātou tupele maua mai, an estimate idea of po le ale toa I ngā renovation le mana o mea, o le ale tātou mo kesi le tutoe, a po wai fo I lātou o lo iai lātou suafa I le mauta I le taimi nei. So toa I ngā mea umalava ia whapea ia ona combine o male o tātou information le ia na o tango le submit le tatou sanga i le bank. Se I tiro le bank po le ale maximum amount e mawhai latou based on our income le maua, based on the estimate value le tatou fale, and an idea of what po le ale value le fale le la iai pea umalo na fale leinga. So these are all estimates at this point. Ia na au mai le pre-approval le bank based on I tatou information le avatu.
Malo, ta ua tele le nā wa le whanongolongo ia le atunu. Ai me sei lātou o le wei o lātou whale na manatu lea. O le equity lai tutoe po lai e awa no o le whale le teimil nei. E ma whai una whaatino ele ngā ruenga. Ai a mai fōi e toi tilo wa o tasi o wanga tau o na lapata I ai tangata nei. E ese le mele ma fōwhau iai. Ai ese mai I le teime o ai e taunu uilu mo le. O le kamuta po o le tufunga whauwhale. E ese fo ia le tusi ino le plan ma fuwanga me ia. Lono winga, o le ala mele la tupu nei pe ala tautele I le kamuta.
Ia mana ia tele le sili wa mantua a au mai le tatou wa tusa o le proposal po le tatou talusanga le la ave le bang. O le latu I ni estimates based on po ai tu ainga values here, po ai tu ainga whaalelenga le sila yele ainga. O la wa ulanga luenga, ele tilo po le ase maximum amount e mawhai ele ainga o na ngā whatia tutongi. O lesi fo I latu ulanga e tauna sila iai, wa au mai le pre-approval le bank. O lea la atu iei le benga ma whaapopo iei se lato estimates. O se lato vaenga fo inga le la sa fitu ilunga on top of the value of fale le teimile nei. This is on the assumption wa umana file renovation. Wa au maila le pre-approval, always, I would say 99% of the teimi, pea whaapea o te lese tato equity o iei le teimi nei as it is.
Yeah.
O le amana o mia le bank's evaluation. O le valuation la leo le aave le alatu le value le o le fale le teimi le iei le teimi nei. O na tuule le estimate le value based on o le ale to a teimi la leo le wa umantalo no o tau ma le kamuta.
Yeah.
O le wei tato pre-approval o la o mai loa estimate costa le ale kamuta. O na avele ana I le value, e tiro la le value a po oa mei o le afa le o le fale. O na tango filo la tu iesa la tu estimate o le value. Lea la afa o popo I le value le tato maota la iei le taimi nei. O na mawai le what we would assume as a value at completion. O le value la na lea la afa o ngā le bank o le mela le ta uai. A te lea lava le tato equity la iei le taimi nei. E ngā whatia fo I lai le tatou income. E te le lava le flexibility e mawhai le bank o na tilo iei wa o le ala iei le whaale lenga. O na whaopopo le iei ma le value na pan mantua foi. It really depends po le ale falling on the market tila iei taimi nei.
Mali lava.
O se whaataita inga o le tūlanga ne I te iwa watu le cost o le building pe whaasela wafes o na whaataita inga. A watu le ile tatou value ai au mai le valuation na le value ai whape o ile ai. O le value of the improvements mo mea la whale leia ona o le marketi le teimi nei. It may only be 300,000. So o tūlanga la whape e au ngā ile te leo se tatou equity la iei le teimi nei. Ina ia mawhaina absorb iei le difference lea la ile cost of building and the cost of the valuation.
So that could be a risk for the client.
It's a risk. O le mela le tūlanga lea e malamala mai le mamalu le tunu o le tatou valuation le la au mai. O na mātou te tala noa la ia mawha malamala mai o le tusa o le majority lava o le mamalu le tunu. O lai okay lava o na lai te lele lato equity la iai. So therefore, even though o lai te lele cost to build o le cost to build wa facing a tamatai le teimi nei.
Yeah.
And o le value of fale lea, it's been going down for the last 12 months. So we le whaapea la tu maua I lalo o lela a matano to e whaasolo I lunga. So there there is a risk in a sense nei te o tele me mana na o ele mamalu le tunu e whaatino. Ai le o lava le tatou equity la iai, so that is a risk. Ai a whapea lai te le tatou value o le equity la iai. Then yes, there is a risk because the lai te le tau to build. Ai o le it's a good risk in a way on o lai ala alu lava ilunga le valuation of low property.
I found pe fia la fiona faltua pe afa pe you know fiona e fautuaina ia le ainga from time to time and build it from one stage and a phase, you know, after umatu le vaenga ina ia mauti no lava. They still have the capacity to service that le pre-approval tupelena mo mai.
Yeah, woman to for le woman file pre-approval le bank. So from the bank's perspective, wa woman approve mai e mawhai tātou na ngā whatia le amount le wa pre-approve mai. So the serviceability po le whaatino ina po le tutongi ina going forward, so long as e le o iei se swinga I le tātou tupe maua. Se whaatai ta inga ni te ua alu alu tātou ngā luenga ai ke ua le aise ngā luenga sesi po you've been laid off, you've been made redundant. So tūlanga la ia mana o mia ile before we actually start the work, a whaapea o e sila po e tauiloa se vaenga whaapea your work is going to close down po se tūlanga whaapea. I need to know that. So ina ia awana ia ini tūlanga whaapea ona ole mea e te tau ona fautuaina ia le mamalu la tunu. A whapea ia ini tūlanga whaapea, then maybe it's time just to pause. Te to a stable leile tātou income ona toi whaatino le tātou ngā luenga I se aso iluma. I hope that makes sense.
Malo, e tau tele because ala no whatu nei. E malamalama a inga pe a whapea e risk ia e pe e 40 mai. A o lea tu atu ele whautuanga. O mea umai mwhaina whai. Wa leo tātia mai le a fo ile tupe lea o le pre-approval. I am whaiona whai vaenga I lea taimi ma lea taimi. Ina ia so soni fo I ainga. Whafonga mai le tātou tunu. O la umalo le na. O le tua fine po o le whaletua fo ia Emele Palamo lana telefoni le nai tu atu ilunga le tātou screen. O lua fitu, valu tolu fitu, valu fa, valu o. So se mea lava vala au ia Emele. Wha maramrama po o iailo whale le teimi nei a hoa ia ngā ruenga mna o toi wha le leia. So o le teimi la le whai ei le appraisal po o le valuation lea. You can actually add value and show the actual cash on that asset po le whale na pa whapea. You know, you've added value po sisi valuation I le whale leo o whaatino nei I le ngāruenga.
Yeah, mana ia te lele sili. Man tua fo le mamalu le tunu. Avele tātou request I le value mo se ngaluenga le ala a whaatino I le whaale lenga o longa ota. E lua vaenga o le alisi mai le value I lunga o le valuation. O le figure mua po o le whainumera mua is o le value o lo maota I le taimile nei as it is ai le iaise me o whaale leia. So o lesi value, the second lot of figures on your valuation is the value wa umana whaale leia le maota according to le plan le wa au mai le builder. So e lua vaenga o le tato valuation o le value o lo property po lo maota I le taimi nei ai le iaise whaale lenga po se tūlanga o suia. And the value pe a umana whai whaatino le ngaluenga le kamuta based on I tato plans, based on the cost, based on I mea umalela whale leia. Wa o tusinga umaya eve le value ona estimate mai e le la tau le value at completion pe a umale tato ngaluenga.
Malo whaftai tāua le malamalama le leia tua mawhaingo fia ai o lea la ua maua le tātou maua le wha o tātou I oi o le a whai renovations ia mawhai le tātou ngā ruenga o ala me mana o mia tātou te o, ma awele whale tupe I tō whiutanga inga nei malau whiunga le whale tua, ma le a inga lela o tō malanga nei.
Ia, whaftai, ai le amatalenga luenga. O le umai le tātou pre-approval, uma mai lo le pre-approval on the Fale o le tau talanoanga ma le kamuta, in this case it might be Thomas, Failato plans ma me umale, wa ave wa mai le tātou valuation, e whiololo lava nei ona fe pulia inga o le a foi. O le vaenga le ona mai le tātou valuation, ona toi ave le bank, pe pasi mai la tātou, ia umana to e mai lea, ia na vatu le ia Thomas au mai leo le what we call a building contract, o le building contract le e ave foi la le bank, pe talia mai le bank le building contract, uma mai lola wa sign off ele pale tupe le tātou valuation, sign off mai le tātou builder's contract. We are 90% there. O le silo la tulanga le la ia, ia o le atu tilo loa po le ale, o le a draw up le bank ia, e tātou loan agreements, wa o le isai nia le loan agreements e au mai ele se le ni le. Ia au mai loa le loan agreements le wa umana saini. Ia umana o mia loa le bank what we call a builder's risk insurance, wa le nga o le ala ia I whale le ngā o le whale. O longa winga le builder's risk insurance has to be submitted to the bank. At this point, a whape o mana o mia le bank, wa ia yesi, le sunga Thomas will cover that. A whape mana o mia se council consent. Ia e mua la ai vele council consent, ai le I whaia tātou, ele I sainina le tātou kong kalake le, whaile le, e release mai ei le se leni. So, the builder's risk insurance, the council consent will go in. Uma lo la tūlanga le, ia to a saini lo le tātou kong kalake with the bank. E a matai le tātou ngaluenga.
Malu.
So how it would work, ele releasing o tātou tupe ia. A whaile tau building contract with Thomas, there is what we call a schedule of payments. O vaenga ia lisi mai ai, pe whea po le ale au whai o le tupe e release mai pe a whaile floor, for example, o le ale au whai o le selenia release mai pe a lulunga walls, tūlanga whapea. There's usually, on average, in most cases on a new build, pe se fulu vaenga e release mai ai bit by bit. So o le whainga lao le tūlanga lea, a matalolenga luenga, Thomas or the builder will invoice le ainga. E alula le invoice directly from the builder le ainga e tsanga siaki la tau. So this is part of my job, is I'll sit down with the family and ia lato lo le leile process la le. Ona ia mai le invoice from the builder, e abel ainga siaki e tau la mana siaki la tau po o in line ma le mele na lato sainina. I le contract. A whapewa ma li lelo la tau au mai e tau le invoice le, the first invoice. O te siakina foila according to the building contract. Be in line with the building contract. A whapeola lau okay, yana abelole le bank. Yana whatu a release mai lole le bank e peisa o lavala le bank a ngai le building company. Le invoice le, so that's how it would go for each invoice until we complete the project.
Mana ia tele. Alono winga le o le ainga le sa uile tupe. E ave anga le bank a mai sa o lava le whale tupe I lima o le kamuta ma le konkalati o leo la tau te whatinuina le ngā luenga. E se le mana ia. O le lava o lono winga, you are with this family all the way, step by step, to the bank, back and forth. Se yo o lava ina mai a le leile ngā luenga.
Ia, e sa leila la saunga a savea ia o le tūlanga lava lea ina ia to make sure lai malama le mamalu le tunu le whaasolonga lea, ia awana I any delays ma mea whapea.
Malo, whawte tele lava. Awa, o tawhisili nga lenda au mai nei. O lewa tu tilo atu. E tā ua I o le review ma beri peise mea there's a revision. That we go over and over of these things. Ai tā ua wālanga I whaalongolongo tangata. E tele lava tangata le mātou talanoa ma. O tangata ua whai o lātou whale. Nisi o to inu maolo mātua o te awhi iai ma mātou talanoa. Wa iai o lātou whale, ai le māl malama. Ia, pe whape I, ona toe whau, si mea e toe whao popo atu ai, o tō tele ta maiti I lea taimi, ia maa si mai, a inga, ia, o po se potu moe, po si mea pipi atu I le whale. Ma le loa ai, so se teimi lava e whaatawele nā whale, that is added value to le tau o le whale, lena whai mua ai. Ia, o le lei, ono le tā taimi tā ua leo ua, foli mai le tā uso lele I le matua o whaiva ia Thomas Kawa Nicolau lem nana whatu maua nei alo wha se koe spela le lei mai I le suafa o Kawa Nicolau malona wha leo ina ia whaingo o fie ai avatu le nei ava noa whaamanuia mai fo I le atunu ia ma le manava o ngā luenga ia malau telefoni ina I mwhai pea ona so tai malo tātou tunu from time to time by lātou o lo fia mai mo le tāpor kalambe.
Ia whaaftai tele lau fionga savea mo le nei fo I ava noa mātanga o fie. Ia whaaftai atu fo I le mamalu le tunu ele o se ngā luenga whaingo fie fo I le tau support mai mana o mia lava le whaape iesi na fasili po le alava se tūlanga I fie malama mai. Ia o le au nanga lava na le o le naunga langa ina ia sosoani le mamalu le tunu ia wha malama tūlanga ese ia e whaaftai tele mo le whaafonga mai le nei a fiafi ia manu ia tele ma lolonga o le a fiafi ia soifua manuia a whaape pia vili mai o lau telefoni o le o lua fitu, valu tolu fitu, o valu wha, valu o, ia soifua ia.
Whaaftei tele lava Emele manuia malolonga o le nei fo I fiafi, tā whai loa I le vai a so fau te ta ia tu eilo soifua a o le a whaalawi loa pēr le tānu mera ia a wā le whaafonga le atunuu malo lātu sila fia a ia manuia foi, wha soifua ia. Ia le nā Samoa, o mua le avanoa e tala noa I fo I le polokalame o le Malu I Fale. Ia, o le ua mai atu I le whaletua ia Emele Palamo. O lana telefoni o le o lua fitu, valu tolu fitu, valu fa, valu o. Ona se e maile o le tātou talanoa. Ia, ma le tātou pāanga masani foi, o le matua o whaiva, ia, o le li I kamuta vai atu o na taulangi. Le sunga ia Thomas Kawa Nicolau. Ma lora soifua mruia, whaaftai I le avanoa ua mwhai ai o na silisilatu le atunu ia matātala noa foi. Talu mai le tei muli sa ta whenua iai. Mai le company o le Builders Blueprint. Alo soifua manuia Thomas.
Alofa Savea, thank you so much for the opportunity to be on the show again. Hello to everyone who's listening, and yeah, it's always a privilege to be on the show, so thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, my brother, for being here to share your knowledge and your experiences, and also ina ia masani fo le tātou o tunu, mai loa le tātou o tunu. O lo iai tama whanau o Samoa, o lo iai o lātou wanga waa, I wheu ia inga, ma le whaangai o ina, o me mana o mia o tātou tangata. O lewa iai le whale, a ua mana o mia, e toi whale, le whale. So what is the process there? Take us through that process, Nicolau, Thomas.
Yeah, thank you, Sabia. Thank you for the question. So the process is a very simple process. I'll just give you the overview of that process. So we've broken down that process into 3 steps. The first step is design. The second step is planning. And the third step is construction. And in those 3 steps, we've broken it down into little mini steps. The most important step of them all is the design and planning steps. So that's phase 1 and phase 2. The reason why this is very important, just to backtrack to the first phase of design, there's about 8 steps in the design process. And then that design process, in those 8 steps, it takes time for your house, research or proper site visit to see the section that you have and to figure out like what sort of need that you have for your home. Because te leo tātou tangata, a lot of the time, they just want something like, oh, I just want a boku here, or I just want to do something here, which is very vague and very simple. But once we have a visit of your house, we understand why you have your home and how you utilize the spaces that you use, so that we can better understand the way to design your house for your renovation, instead of just giving you just a rough design over the phone.
Mm.
And so that process of design, the phase one, we've broken it down into 8 different steps, and it takes time and patience to work through those steps in order to find the best process for the family.
Malo, Lona Winga, you know, these people, the owners of the job, you will sit together with them from time to time. Mawhaa ali atu ia I lātou, le mea o lo mana o ai, ia wa o le tūte lea, na o lo lātou mana onga, a o tau, lātou te tusia I lalo, mafuafua, whātu a o ai. No ringa o le matua tele o le awala fo, le tauna uia, ina ia mauti no. Why do you have to go through all this to make sure that that the design is built customarily catered for them for what they are needing?
Thank you for the question. The reason why we take such a process for our clients is because renovation, there's a lot of risk in renovation.
Mm.
With one of the main risks of renovations is what everyone, I'm sure a lot of people know this, and that's budget blowouts. And the reason why blowouts are low budget is because you didn't spend the time in the beginning designing everything that you need, right down to the very color of the doorknob, to the color of the doors, to the color of the floor, what type of tiles that you're going to use, what sort of carpet you're going to use, the specification behind each of those items that I've just mentioned. There's a lot of detail involved with Fale.
Yeah.
It's not just a simple, I just want a quotation. I just want something vague. And that's the reason why there's a lot of budget blowouts.
Yeah.
And we go through this process with our clients so that we can eliminate, well, not eliminate, but minimize the risk to the client. And also for us as well, we don't want a bad reputation in the trade. So we try our very best to catch everything in the planning and design stage.
Fale, because you weren't the original builder of the building, are you able to request a blueprint of the building that you're actually going to renovate?
Yes. So before we do a site visit, we do a pre-qualifying process, which is it's also tough because they're not used to that sort of conversation where I ring them up and I say, hey, I just want to ask you a few questions over the phone so that we can see if we're the right fit for you, for your work. The first process of that is they should have access to what we call their property file. Everyone should have their property file when they purchase the property, or you can just order your property file from council. Now, if there was a good builder who built the house before us, there will be a good property file where we just have a look at the plans, and then we're able to put together what we call a concept plan before we do a site visit with the client, majority of the time. But if we don't have access to the property file, we'll do a consultation with the client, and then we still will request the property file after the consultation. We really need that property file in order to go through that process properly.
Beautiful, brother. You know, I'm just following you, the steps that you're going through, because you also want to minimize the risk, not only for you, because you have the builder's risk insurance, you know, that have to be upfront as well.
Yeah. So the builder's risk insurance is normally the client normally gets a builder's risk insurance. So it's not really us that has it, but we are liable for any work that's done for 10 years under the license and makolai sengi. So it's very important that the people that you get on board, like I mentioned in the last show, you need to be certified and you need to be licensed in New Zealand to undergo any work. Even if it's something simple, you should still get people that are credible in New Zealand. A lot of the work that we have done over the years, our whole company has been built off referrals.
I.
We haven't really done, we've done a little bit of marketing, but all our work, I would say about 90% of our work has been referrals.
Referrals.
So that shows you how credible our team are
Yeah.
in doing what we do, and the process that we've refined over the years. It's taken years to get this process
Perfect.
together. So when we go and we meet people, we always tell them that the process that we're taking you through is a proven process that's going to help get what you want and also safeguard you for the duration of the process. Otherwise, it's a lot of risk for the client.
Malu. It's a taua. Ono leo te vavai atu. You care for your clients, and that's why you go out of you're doing everything in your power and according to the principles and certifications, specifications. Also, what are some of the upfront costs when you're ready to do the renovation?
Thank you for the question. So, and lastly, I mentioned on the show that when we come on board with you, we act as your consultant for you. A lot of building companies, they'll just come in and they'll ask you for some plans, and then they'll quote a job for you, and then they'll give the quote back to you. And there's not really like a process involved as a consultant who looks after you. Our job when we come on board as a consultant for you, protecting you, the client, is we take you through step by step to dealing with all the other consultants involved, all the designers, all the engineers, and everything to do with council. So we help you through that process. And in that process, there are upfront costs involved with design. So the first steps that we go through is what we call a concept plan design, where we put together a draft or a mock-up of what you want to build. Like a simple...
Like a little model or something
Yeah,
like
like
that.
a little model, just so that we can have an idea of what you're after. But it all comes from the first questions where we ask you in the consultation, where when do you want to start? Have you built before? What is your budget? Which is very important, because there's no point in us having a conversation about building your fale when you don't know your budget, you haven't had a pre-approval, and then you're sort of going through the motion of just not only your time but our time as well to plan something that's never going to come into fruition. So it's very important that we get the budget right.
Yeah.
But the upfront cost for that is depending on your job, depending on the scale of your job. There's not one shoe fits all sort of price. It all depends.
So the estimates come from you, the builders, designer, and planners?
Yes. So like I said, we handle that whole process for you. Like I said, phase 1 and phase 2, that process there. So phase 1 design has 8 steps. We take you through each step of the way. And during those 8 steps, we are in contact with Emele, we are in contact with the designers, we are in contact with all the consultants involved, the engineers, and there are many different engineers as well. There's not just one. There's many different ones. And also with our designer. So, and the process that you're dealing with us is you're dealing with a team of people that have been working together for a very long time in order to protect you through this process. So it's very important that you find that credible team.
Malu lava. Whawhonga mai le tātua tunu, mātana noa ma le sunga a Thomas Karanicolau, mai le company o le Builders Blueprint, Nadsin sila atu iai ilana telefoni o loo ilalo, o luatasi 555 tolu wono wha. Ia, mo so se vaenga o lo mauta, le uto whawhonga mai nei, ele whaingo fie. Mana ia wha malama le leia o I stepu ese uma. A o le whaia, a o le whaatinoina le ngaruenga. So, why would that somebody else gives a very cheaper quote than you guys? Why? What's your reaction to that, and why should I use your company if I get a cheaper quote?
That's a very good question. The reason why I always turn down jobs that ask me for a cheap quote is because, one, we don't do that. We don't do cheap quotes because that's not credible. It's not a credible team that's giving you that quotation. If you go for a company that's going to give you a cheap quote, I think it's already in the statement on its own. Cheap equals problems. And if you don't plan, you plan to fail. Has always been the motto for our team. So for us, we take you through a process that's going to protect you. And I always say to clients that are looking for something fast is looking for value, or are you looking for something cheap? Because nothing cheap ever comes without a price tag at the end. The other reason why we take you through this process is because I guarantee a fixed price. Not a lot of people in the industry like to guarantee fixed price in renovations because there's a lot of risk for the building company. But because of our experience and our process over the years, and we refined it, I'm able to do that, and I stand on that, and I stand on my guarantee every time. Number 3 is our proven process, like I mentioned before. We've done this for so long that we know that our process works, and it protects you from the risk that you may have later on down the line. And that risk that you run when you go with someone cheap is they give you an estimate based on just a figment of their imagination. Like you could, I'm going to roughly estimate that per square meter. Or I'll look at that, I roughly estimate that. And rough equals problems later on. If you don't know exactly the colors of everything, you don't know what sort of selections that you go through, it's called a selections list that we take you through. If you don't have every single item accounted for, it's going to come back later on, and then those companies will charge you what we call a variation. And the banks don't like variations. So you have to be careful about that too. Whereas with us, we take you through that process, and if we have missed something, then that's something that I have to, and I have it on radio now and on video, that I take that upon myself because it's something that I've missed. So that's why it's very important that you go through that process.
Wonderful to listen. I mean, I've learned a lot too from your experience. So that people can fully understand the process o le tau o lana paketi ia whapena fo'i a o le I whaia le ngaruenga. O le sa o le na.
Yes, that's right. Sa o le. We come in as more of educators rather than someone trying to take your money. I think that's very important. Our people, a lot of people take advantage of our families. And that's why we come in and we've created this process, is because at the end of this process, it's very important that we have a good reputation. It's important for us, for you to treat us like family. If I see you later on down the road and you're having lunch with your family, I can say hello, you know.
This is the guy that built a plan and print, you know.
And like I said, that's the reputation that we're after, is amongst our people, especially Samoa. If I spread the good or the bad news amongst our community, so it's important for us to have a good reputation.
And not only that too, you know, the safety of your customers and taking pride in the work that you have performed, planned, and designed. So pretty much, quotes, they probably wouldn't request a report file on or property file on your property. Yeah, but taking risk. Malu is le tau le whalongolongo atu. So, ile teimi lea e whaielo tō ngarwenga. Ia, ai leisene, ma whaatangana, specifications with the council, ma me uma, o ai whaia mea ia.
Thank you for the question. So that whole process, like I mentioned, that's handled by my team.
Oh, right.
We have a designer that we work very, very close with. Not only do we work with a designer, we have a draftsman, and we also have an architect that we work very, very closely with. In my company as well, I have my own, what we call a quantity surveyor, who works for my team. which is someone that specializes in pricing ngaluenga for renovations or anything in construction, really. So the guy that prices the jobs, he's like an accountant for building. You could call it that.
Right.
So our figures and the way we present our reports, we offer two different with our quotation, if you would say. I like to call it our proposal to the client.
Yeah.
We offer, one is called a trade summary. Number two, it's called a trade report. So in the trade summary, it gives you an overview of the full breakdown on ngaluenga from step by step, from right through from demolition all the way through to the finish. And in the trade report, it has a more detailed breakdown of each of those areas, and how much and materials le alu le whainga le area nga, so that we supply that to your mortgage broker. And the handling of the consent process, we handle that process for you, because we want to be able to make the renovation process streamlined and also just easy for our clients. Because a lot of our people for it's not a simple process to just go on council website and try and figure out how to lodge your building consent, how to apply for your CCC at the end of the end of the project. So we like to handle that for you as a full design team and management company.
And not only that too, you don't want that schedule of payment, blocked, or, at some point, maybe there's a budget blowout or things that happened, and you didn't plan for these things. Le whai o le ngaluenga a o lo mwhai whai o na whaasolo mai pēr i le tau o tutongi ma mea o lo o whaatino o le ngaluenga. Sao no le mea lea, Thomas?
Yeah. So budget blowouts, that's a very good question. So budget blowouts happen when you don't plan. You've got to plan every single detail of the job before you start. And that process takes time. There's a lot of meetings between us and the client, and also in the background, between us and the design team. We go back and forth to see what design is going to be suitable to the client's pakiki. So there's no point in designing the Taj Mahal or the Sky City design. Fale only has a budget of 150,000. So we try and make it work with the budget, and we work backwards from the budget. If there is unforeseen, for example, most of the unforeseen is always when there's issues with ground conditions. But that's the whole point behind planning with a good surveyor, a good engineer, and a good designer or an architect that we work with. Is we go through that process. We ask them, hey, do the testing on the ground, make sure they see issues with the soil. Our engineer is very good. We work alongside them as well to make sure that the fale is safe and structurally sound. And then also our designer or our architect works with us in order to get the right selections list together for our client that they're able to afford as well, so that we don't run into budget blowouts. Budget blowouts is not only bad for the client and also bad for us, because it's running a risk for us as well. So it's very important that you plan.
Malu, I'm very impressed. Thomas Karanicolau from Builders Blueprint, waifo ile telefoni le na tamam tina ma tu le uto fa fonga mai. E ai tama whanau Samoa, e atama mai, malamalama mau la tō whailonga. I le telefoni la o luatasi, 558 tolu wha alo na fo i te whaona wala mai te au, le ua wha mawina le numera na Thomas, ia awa, ia le mana o fo i e wala au i stemi, and whai o nei wala mai i a te au. Brother, thank you so much for your time. Really enjoyed, asking you these questions so that our people can understand. Malamalama for the depth of your knowledge and about the business and the practice. This is what I think, whateitai fo i o tātou tangata. Aua tātou te whai mea tūla whai fo lele whapea. O le a whaise ngā ruenga e le ititi le tupe whai le mea te tau na whai. Fua le lei. Ma peleni le lei le matau. Well, final words from you, my brother.
Thank you so much, Xavier. It's always a privilege and an honor to be on the show to help our people and to help educate our people in this process. And if you want to get a hold of us, our number is 021 558 364 in order to protect you, Malu Asika, that you're trying to build, and also for your family as well, for the future, for your next generation. Taylor Xavier, thank you so much.
Thank you, my brother. Have a good evening and looking forward to having you on the show again in the future. But we are loving day of Yafi Fasu for you.
As before.
Elena Samoa, Tawalunga Twelitanuanga Maluso Oka Oka. The wealth of knowledge and the depth of experience with this young, handsome man. Thomas Karanicolau, Raul Telefoni Lena, All Watasi, Lima Valu. O saole na lima valu tolu ono fase to yaki fwai na Thomas. All Watasi, lima valu tolu ono fa